Good morning, official good morning. Let's switch to English and let's get started with our today's lesson. As mentioned, today's lesson will be interrupted by a trial fire alarm, so we will work until 9, then we'll have a short break, and afterwards we'll continue, okay? Good. Yesterday we closed with a little example or exercise, let's put it that way. I asked you to implement the getWinner index method in order to find out who the winner is. Most of you, I think at least some of you, have successfully built the implementation of the method during the lesson. If you haven't, please go to the GitHub repository of our course and take the implementation from there. So we make sure that everybody has a working implementation. I will copy the link into our Discord server here so that you do not need to look it up manually. Here is the link, so you can use the Discord server and the link there, and it will lead you directly to the implementation of getWinner index. And for you to make it easier to follow, I will also copy this implementation into my code. If you haven't managed to get a working implementation yesterday during the lesson, I highly recommend to practice that at home. So take the time, sit down and try to implement it at home. Whenever you have problems, come to me, ask me, send me a Discord message. We can arrange a meeting, or you can ask your fellow students. I'm pretty sure that we will make it happen that everybody understands the solution. As I said, algorithms in this complexity level shouldn't be a problem in the 4th grade anymore. So if you haven't done it, it's time to practice. Now the getWinner index here is a private method, as you can see it here. So it's not accessible from outside the component. I will fold it up to get a better view here. The whole idea of this private getWinner index is to store the winner index in a property. Because we will quite frequently check whether there is a winner, and executing the method over and over again to check whether there is a winner is inefficient. The status of whether there is a winner in our TicTacToe game can only change in one and exactly one method, in the set method. Because if nothing is set in our TicTacToe board, there cannot magically appear a winner. Understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. So what we are going to do inside of our set method, after we do the checking and so on, we are going to store the current winner index with the method here. By the way, we talked about it yesterday, and now I have turned it on and I leave it on the GitHub Copilot. You see, things like that, I don't have to write this code. GitHub Copilot will recognize that automatically and just tell me, yeah, that is a good idea. I just have to write the first few letters and it understands what I want to do, and I can simply complete it. If you haven't installed it, you have to write it manually. That's perfectly fine. The current winner index, if we scroll up a little bit, is again a private field. See it? It's a private field. So it cannot be used outside of our class. What we want to have is we want to have a public way of getting the current winner. We could do that by changing that here to public, but that would not be a good software design. Why? Because then somebody could take our class and simply set the winner. So that would be a possibility of cheating. So this is not what we want to do. What we want to say or express is the winner is read-only. So what we are going to do is we are going to say public get winner index, something like this. That should be a number, bless you. And here we return the current winner index. Get it? We practiced and talked about that yesterday. This is a property assessor. And then let's define another method, public getWinner name. GetWinner name. It should return a string, that is correct. And then it should return exactly that. The player names this current winner index. Maybe the thing with Copilot was too theoretical yesterday, but did you see what was happening now? I didn't write the line of code at all. This is what you get from this artificial coding tools. Okay, so now we have the winner name, we have the winner index, and we have stored everything in a property. Let's go into the HTML file and complete our logic, and we do that by using this getWinner is here. Here we want to write down the winner. Get winner name, and that should give us the winner.
Get winner name.
Absolutely. Just for a quick repetition, we discussed that last week. The player names is an array where we have for the player 0 an empty name, for the player 1 an X, and for the player 2 an O. Okay? Implementation clear? I guess so, right? Good question.
Why do we need the property, so the getWinner index?
This one?
Yeah.
Just because I want to practice a property assessor together with you. That's all. Okay, good. This is the HTML. Let's start the Angular app. If you haven't already done so, say npm start, please. npm start. And let's try it. It will not be great. It will not be great. If I go to level 2, you see, the winner is empty. See it? If I play a good game, it will change to X. That works. If I do it that way, the winner is O. That works too. But if I don't have a winner yet, it still says the winner is nothing. I want to hide this message as long as there is no winner. Okay? How can I do that? Are you familiar with the HTML attribute, which is called hidden? If I do that, it disappears, you see? Okay? And what have we learned about bindings in Angular? Can you remember this guy here with the square brackets? So what we can do is we can use a binding in Angular for the hidden thing here and simply say winner index, and now I'm going to use the property equals 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 0. That means hide this header if the winner index is empty. So we can essentially bind to any attribute, any class, using the square bracket syntax in Angular. So remember this syntax with the square brackets. There will be more special characters. We will have the round braces for events. We'll have the square brackets. We have the curly braces here. We will have a combination of square brackets and round brackets, the so-called banana in a box binding. It's really strange. It is called like that because if you take a look at that one, it looks like two bananas lying inside a box. And this is why we call it the banana in a box binding. It's really part of the documentation. That's not a joke. We'll talk about that. That will be a two-way binding. And we will also see some structural directives in the next level, in level 3. So special characters are really important. Now, before we go into level 3, I would like to ask you a few questions. Because sometimes we take things for granted if we use a platform, and we never think about how it was really implemented. This is HTML, right? No, it isn't. It's called HTML. It smells like HTML. It sounds like HTML. It looks like HTML, but it isn't HTML. Not the traditional HTML. I can prove that to you. Please do not follow along. I want to demonstrate something to you, okay? Now we are just in understanding mode, not in doing mode. Let me quickly take StackBlitz. Let's create a very, very simple blank TypeScript project. It's just HTML, CSS, and TypeScript. I will zoom in a little bit. And I have a question to you. What happens if I, for instance, put a h2 here, hello world? I close it here. What happens in HTML if I screw up and say h3? See it on the right-hand side? Nothing. HTML is smart. HTML says, oh, Rainer opened H2 and he closed H3. Probably he has done something wrong. I will try to do my very best to make it work. That is HTML, right? This is why we love HTML. And now let me show you what's going to happen if I do the same here in Angular. Okay, TD, I get a warning, yes, but ooh, everything breaks. What's going on here? If I take a look at the developer tools at the console, I even see that we have some compiling going on. And this is essentially a compiler error. What the heck? This is HTML, right? Where is a compiler? A compiler is typically used when we have Java and we compile it to intermediate language, when we have C# and we compile it to intermediate language, when we have C and we compile it to machine language. That is a compiler. But HTML? It's just text. It's interpreted by the browser and there is no compiler. True for traditional HTML, false for Angular. You know what Angular does with your HTML files? Do you have a good seat? So don't fall across if I tell you that. It's going to compile your HTML into JavaScript. There is no HTML anymore in Angular. That is not perfectly right. There is a single HTML file in Angular, and that's that one. The index.html. Everything else is compiled via multiple steps to JavaScript. So this is why I told you that this looks like HTML, it smells like HTML, it sounds like HTML, but it isn't HTML. It is in fact the Angular template language. And just because it's easier for us as developers to learn HTML template language because we already know HTML, just because of that, the Angular developer decided to go for HTML. They could have invented a completely new template language. They could have done that. But then we as developer would have to learn a completely new language. And with that, we can apply our existing HTML skills and rely on the fact that Angular will do the heavy lifting and translate everything into JavaScript. And why do you think Angular did that? Just a quick history lesson. The version of Angular before the version that we are working here with was called AngularJS, and they didn't do that. They didn't translate HTML to JavaScript. But why do you think they made the decision to translate everything to JavaScript? It has two important aspects here. There are more, but two which are relevant for now. The first one is performance. With all these bindings going on, all these things, they are logic. This is logic that has to be run over and over again whenever something changes. So the data binding is essentially programming. What we do here, listen closely, that is important, is declarative programming as opposed to imperative programming. Have you ever heard these terms? They are important. Imperative programming is that. That is imperative programming. You use for loops, you use if statements, you use calculations, conditions. You, as the developer, tell the machine each step it has to do. This is imperative programming. Declarative programming means that you, as the developer, just specify the expected outcome. And you do not specify the algorithm. Another very prominent example in terms of a declarative language is SQL, the structured query language. There you just say select blah from blah, inner join blah, where blah, group by blah, having blah. Understand what I mean? You don't tell the system, take the first row from that, then look up this row from there, compare this, do that, calculate this sum. You just specify what the output should be. And the machine comes up with the algorithm. And in Angular, HTML, this template language, is essentially declarative programming. We simply say, whenever this getStyle changes, change the class. We don't tell the system how this is done. We don't write ifs and fors and all this stuff. We just say what should the output be. And the rest is done by the Angular compiler. Understood? And that is performance. It's simply a matter of performance. And the second thing is, because they have a compiler, they own this language. Is this syntax with these square brackets a compatible construct in W3C, World Wide Web Consortium, in W3C HTML standard? No. The HTML standard does not understand square brackets. But they wanted to use square brackets. So they have to have something that understands these square brackets and translate it to something executable. And this is why the Angular team decided to go for a compiler. This compiler is huge. You are now using Angular 14, and if you would have used Angular from version 2 until version 14, you would have seen an original implementation from the compiler, and approximately a few years ago, they re-implemented everything, the entire compiler infrastructure from scratch. So now with Angular 14, we already have the second evolution of this HTML compiler. And it's fast. It's really, really fast. Does that influence in any way how you program with Angular? No. It's just important to understand the differences. Because sometimes you will get into discussions with people who say, hey, who needs Angular? Angular is way too complicated, or it works exactly like Vue or Svelte or something like that. That's simply not true. Okay? And as an Angular developer, you should understand what's going on behind the scenes. Okay, very good. So we have understood that HTML is a template language. And Angular could have invented a new one, but they didn't. And that's a good idea. Nice. I like that. We can start into level 3, right? Let's do that. Quick question. Can somebody tell me how I create a new component in Angular? We already did that. Yes, I see a hand going up. Yes.
npx ng
yes.
generate
Yeah.
component.
Yeah.
Level 3.
Good, like that. Level 3. Please do not write level 3 component, because that would give you a level 3 component. So no level 3 component, just level 3. Question?
No, I think we need something in addition. The minus skip tests, you told us that we need.
Very good. We can have skip tests. But you know what? You can do the skip tests, but I will do a mistake here. I will not do the skip tests and show you how I can fix that. npx ng generate component level 3. That generates everything, and you see I forgot the skip tests. And you know how I can fix that? I can simply take the spec file and delete it. That's the same.
Okay.
So if you forget it, that's not a problem. These spec files are important. They are about unit testing. And I will tell you more about unit testing maybe in a few weeks. It is super, super important, but for now we will skip it. One step after the other. What Angular did, Angular created the level 3 component and added it to app module. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to add it to our menu. We already have the level 3 here in the menu, but we don't have the routing yet. App routing module. And there we can add a URL to our component. I will simply duplicate level 2 and change it to level 3 and level 3. Oh my God, it doesn't work. Why? Yeah?
Because the import is missing.
Exactly. If I click on this level 3 component here, I have this little light bulb, and I can simply use add import from level 3 component. Click. Done. Good. And with that, we can immediately try it. Go to level 3. Level 3 works fine. This is exactly what I want to have. Yes. Okay. Level 2 component CSS contained the import of our CSS. We did that in the first lesson. And we can do exactly the same for level 3. So please copy the content of level 2 component CSS into level 3 component CSS. I take level 2 component CSS, copy it, go to level 3 and paste it here. That will simply import our existing CSS stuff. Now let's think about the level 3 component TS. First, we don't need this onInit yet. We will talk about that later on. So you can remove the onInit and you can remove the ng onInit. We will use that later on when we use web APIs. For now, we can delete it. Level 3 should behave nearly identical to level 2. So can we do a kind of import here? Can we do a kind of extension? Yes, of course we can. We are in an object-oriented language. And how do I extend a class in an object-oriented language? With inheritance. I can create an inherited class from the original one. And in TypeScript, you write that like this. You say extends level 2 component. And with extends level 2 component, we get all the features from level 2 component and can add additional features. The only thing that is kind of new compared to other languages you have learned is that in TypeScript, you have to call the constructor of the base class manually in the new constructor. So you have to call super, because the base class is also called superclass. And that calls the constructor of the base class. The error was pretty good. If you take a look, it just says constructors for derived classes must contain a super call. Now, what we want to do in level 3 compared to level 2 comes to a certain degree pretty natural if we take a look at the implementation of level 2. Let me show you what I mean. If you take a look at this HTML of level 2 and you take a look here, then this is kind of obvious that in real life we don't want to write so many indexes, right? I mean, this is 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. This is 0, 1, 2. Here, the same. See that one? 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. And I don't need to read everything here again because it's over and over the same. This shouts out to you what? Please create a loop. Please create a loop and stop copying code. Because if you copy code, that's way too much work, and you are definitely going to screw up the indexes. This is why somebody has invented a for loop, right? So this is what we want to do in level 3. We want to get rid of these unnecessary lines and turn it into a loop. However, if you take a look at what we have here, we need a little bit of extra work, because inside of the loop, if you take a look what we need, inside of the loop we need here the style. Inside of the loop we need the player name, and we can pre-calculate that. We can create some kind of array where we have completely calculated from scratch the classes and the player names. And then, of course, we need the set, but this is just a method, so that is fine. So what we need is a data structure that gives us a 2-dimensional array where we have 3 by 3 style name, player name. Understand what I mean? So we need for element 0, 0, style name, player name. For element 1, 0, style name, player name. For element 2, 0, style name, player name. This is what we need. Because otherwise the for loops will not really work.
Yeah, I don't understand why we're not just using the for loop and putting the line for in the loop.
I get it. So the idea that you would have is, please do not follow along. Yeah. Please do not follow along, okay? I will screw it up consciously. So I take this code, I copy it here, and your idea, if I got it correctly, would be that we essentially delete this one and make some kind of for, something like let I equal 0, I lower 3, I plus plus, something like this, and then do something like that, and then we could, for instance, say here I, and here I, and here I, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I have bad news for you. Angular doesn't support that. Angular doesn't have a counting loop. Angular doesn't have for with an index that counts up. The only thing that Angular can do is a for each loop. So you need some kind of collection over which you can iterate. Something like this is not available in Angular. You could build it on your own, but we don't want to do that because it absolutely makes sense that we have exactly that. Now let's take a look at the level 2 if we would have something like this where we could do an iteration. And it turns out, oh yes, we have that. See? We have the board content. This is what we really have. So we could use the board content, but this board content here only contains the player indexes. And it would be much nicer if we would translate this board content from a number array into something where the class and the player name is already calculated. Because then the code will be pretty obvious. Let me show you how this should look like. I will write the HTML first. It will not work. And then we will write the TypeScript code in order to make it work. Okay? I will do the following. I will say, and now you can continue. You can join in, okay? First, we need to loop over the TRs. So you can make it clear. You can copy the level 2, the entire level 2 HTML file into the level 3 HTML file. Just copy it completely. Please really copy it. We will change it fundamentally. So it doesn't make sense to inherit or something. It will change. Now the TR is, you see it here, here, and here, repeated 3 times. So we delete the repetition and keep just one TR. The TD is repeated 3 times. 1, 2, 3. We simply go and delete the repetition. This is essentially what we want to have, and we want to tell Angular, repeat that for each row, repeat that for each column, right? Good. And this is the syntax. You say star ngFor. Don't ask me why it's star. It is just star. The developers of Angular said, we want to have special character star here. It is like it is. It's called a structural component. Star ngFor, let row of, I called it get cells. Something like this. And additionally, I say let row index equals to index. It doesn't work because we have to implement this method first, but for now it's okay. In the TD, we again use a star ngFor and say let call of row. So now we are iterating over the columns inside the row. You see this is a nested for loop. You have seen that in C#, you have seen that in Java, you have seen that in C. But now you see it in Angular. This is the loop getting all the rows. This is the loop getting the columns of the row. And then we can get the call index as the index inside of the loop here. Okay, good, very good question. Let's quickly jump into the TypeScript playground. Const numbers equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How can I loop over all these numbers? One possibility for let I equals 0, I lower than number.length, I plus plus, console log number I. That's baby stuff, right? You learn that in the first class in the school. You have done it in C, you have done it in C#, you have done it in Java, and you have done it maybe in 10 other languages. So this is really kind of obvious. The second loop is much more interesting. For let number of numbers. Sorry, I have to change that name. That wasn't a good decision. Console log number. Make sense? And this is exactly what Angular does.
All right.
Yeah? So this is the off loop. By the way, a common mistake in JavaScript, yeah, I can run it. It really works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it really works. A common mistake of beginner JavaScript developers is that they write this. It exists. It really exists. But the output is really strange. Let me show you that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is this one. And then we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 as strings. Isn't that strange? Do you know what for in does?
Keys.
Exactly. It gets the keys of the object. Let me show you that. If I define a class person, and I define a first name, string, and a last name, string, and I say let p equals new person, p.firstname equals foo, and p.lastname equals bar, and then I say for let something in p console log something. Let's run it. Then I get, see, first name and last name. I get the names of the fields, properties, or methods of the object. Understand what I mean? This is what's going to happen behind the scenes.
Why is there a warning?
This because I didn't assign a value. I would have to say something like this.
Yeah, sure.
Or something with the exclamation mark. We discussed that yesterday. It's a null, an undefined error because I defined it as string. I can also remove this error by doing this. I hope you can remember.
Ah, yeah, sure.
And then the error also goes away.
Yeah.
Make sense? Good. Very good. By the way, do you know that JavaScript supports the following? Just a little bit of advertising for JavaScript. I could say numbers 10 equals 6. Let's run it. Let's see what's going to happen. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. That is the first loop, obviously. We go to the numbers.length. Then we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, sorry, this I have to look it up here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, undefined, 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 6. See, all the elements in the middle, they are undefined. But the indexes are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. So a JavaScript array is a so-called sparse array. So you can define values with holes in the middle of the array. You can say there is a value at index 2 and a value at index 10,000. And in the middle, I don't have anything. This is possible in JavaScript. JavaScript is absolutely fine with that.
But the length is now 11, right?
The length, yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Okay, that was just the answer to your question regarding the off. The Angular for loop works very similar to the for off loop in JavaScript. The only thing that Angular also gives you some additional data. So we also get the index where we currently are, because that's sometimes pretty useful. Now, the class should be the ready-made class of the column. So we simply say the class should be the class of the column, which is the iterator variable in this for loop. The set should now be the column index and the row index. And the player name should be the ready-made, the ready calculated player name in the column. So the only thing that we have to build now in order to make that run is we have to implement the method getCells which translates, try to follow along, which translates this data structure, a two-dimensional array of indexes, to a two-dimensional array of a combination of the class and the player name. Now we have 4 minutes left before we have to leave because of the fire alarm, and I really want to make this very clear to you. So I allow you to copy the sample solution from my level 3 because I would like to complete this thought without having a break in the middle. Please copy this code and I will immediately give you the link in the Discord server. Here is the Discord server, here is the link. Please copy the code and we will take a look at this code. What this code does, it has a loop, it has a nested loop, and it prepares, see that one, a two-dimensional array of player name and class. It's a structured data type. We are simply putting the logic in TypeScript where we calculate the player name and the style for each column row combination, and we put it into a data structure. The question is, how can this data structure work? What is this data structure? And again, I allow you, because we have to leave in a few minutes, to go again into my sample solution and copy lines 4 to 17. After the fire alarm test, we will talk more about this interfaces stuff. So I copy the interface up here, and now all the errors should be gone. If you try it, it should, in level 3, already work. That was timing. After the fire alarm test, we will talk more about the interfaces. For now, please leave the building.